Have you ever given your entire soul to someone, sacrificed your beauty, your dreams, and your dignity, only to be tossed aside like yesterday's trash? That is exactly where Elora found herself on what was supposed to be her 5th wedding anniversary. She sat at a table surrounded by family, expecting a toast to their love. Instead, her husband, Mason, stood up, mocked her weight, laughed at her empty bank account, and threw divorce papers right into her pasta. But Mason made a fatal calculation. He didn't realize that the poor housewife he was humiliating held a secret that could destroy his entire empire in a single heartbeat. You are not going to believe how this ends. The crystal chandelier above the dining table at the Harrison estate seemed to vibrate with tension. It was supposed to be a celebration, the 5th wedding anniversary of Mason and Elora Harrison. But the air in the room was so thick with unspoken malice that Elora felt like she was breathing through a wet wool blanket. Elora smoothed the fabric of her dress. It was an off-the-rack floral print she had bought at a discount store 3 years ago. It was slightly faded at the hem, and she knew it was a size too tight around her waist after the stress eating of the last few months. She looked across the mahogany table at her husband, Mason. Mason looked impeccable. He was wearing a bespoke Italian suit, his dark hair gelled to perfection, a Rolex glinting on his wrist, a Rolex Elora had saved for 2 years to buy him as a promotion gift. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Instead, he was whispering something to the woman sitting next to him. That was the first dagger in Elora's heart. It was their anniversary, yet Mason had invited his mother, Brianna, and his new assistant, Charlotte. Charlotte was everything Elora currently felt she wasn't. She was 22, blonde, and wearing a red silk dress that looked like it cost more than the car Elora drove. Charlotte laughed at something Mason whispered, her hand lingering on his forearm a second too long. So, Brianna, Mason's mother, said, her voice cutting through the clinking of silverware. She swirled her wine glass, looking at Elora with a mixture of pity and disgust. Elora, dear, I notice the roast is a bit dry. Did you cook this yourself, or did you hire that cheap catering service again? Elora swallowed hard, her hands trembling beneath the table. I cooked it, Brianna. It's Mason's favorite recipe. Used to be my favorite, Mason corrected sharply, finally looking at her. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth they held 5 years ago when they were struggling college students. My tastes have evolved, unlike some people. Charlotte giggled, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. Oh, Mason, don't be so mean. I'm sure she tried her best. Not everyone has a palate for the finer things. It's not just the food, Mason said, his voice rising. He set his fork down with a loud clatter. The room went silent. The servants in the corner looked down, embarrassed. Mason? Elora whispered. What's wrong? What's wrong? Mason let out a harsh, barking laugh. He stood up, towering over the table. Look at this. Just look at this scene. He gestured around the room, then pointed a finger directly at Elora. I am the CEO of Harrison Tech. I am on the cover of Forbes Under 30. I have investors flying in from Dubai next week. He leaned forward, placing his palms on the table. And then there is you. Elora shrank back. Me? Look at you, Elora, Mason sneered, his voice dripping with venom. You're wearing a dress that looks like curtains from a motel. You haven't been to a gym in 2 years. You look exhausted. You look poor. I look exhausted because I handle all the accounting for your startup from home so you don't have to pay a CFO. Laura's voice shook, but she tried to hold her ground. I look poor because we've put every cent of profit back into the company. The company I built? Mason roared. You just organize spreadsheets. Anyone can do that. Charlotte could do that. Actually, Charlotte chimed in, smiling sweetly. I have a degree in marketing. I think I could do a bit more than just spreadsheets. Brianna took a sip of her wine. He has a point, Elora. A man of Mason's stature needs a wife who fits the part. You've let yourself go. It's embarrassing to bring you to galas. People think you're the help. Tears pricked Elora's eyes, hot and stinging. I supported us when you had nothing, Mason. I paid the rent when you were coding in the garage. I skipped meals so you could afford server space. That was the past, Mason yelled. This is the present. And in the present, you are an anchor around my neck. You are dead weight. You are a plain, boring, poverty-stricken anchor." He reached into his suit jacket. Elora's heart stopped. She thought, for a split second, maybe it was a jewelry box. Maybe this was a cruel joke before a surprise gift. Mason pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I didn't want to do this tonight," Mason lied. The gleam in his eyes said he absolutely wanted to do this tonight. "But I can't drag this out. I need to be free to merge my company with the Zenith Group next month. They need a CEO with a strong modern image, not a CEO with a frumpy wife." He tossed the envelope onto the table. It slid across the polished wood, knocking over a crystal salt shaker, and landed right on top of Elora's plate, soaking into the gravy of the roast she had spent 4 hours cooking. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." The bold black letters screamed at her. "Sign them," Mason demanded. "The terms are generous. I'm giving you the old Honda and $10,000. Considering you came into this marriage with zero, you should be grateful." $10,000? Elora whispered, staring at the paper. "Mason, the company is worth $50 million. "The company is mine," Mason slammed his hand on the table. "My intellectual property, my code. You are entitled to nothing. Sign it, take the money, and get out of my house. Charlotte is moving in tonight." Charlotte beamed, holding up her hand to reveal a massive diamond ring. A ring Elora realized was the same design she had liked on Pinterest months ago. "Surprise," Charlotte whispered. The silence that followed was deafening. Brianna looked bored. Mason looked triumphant. Charlotte looked smug. They all waited for Elora to cry. They waited for her to scream, to beg, to throw herself at Mason's feet and plead for another chance. But Elora didn't cry. She slowly picked up the napkin, wiped a spot of gravy off the envelope, and looked up. The fear in her eyes was gone. In its place was something cold, hard, and terrifyingly calm. "You want a divorce, Mason?" Elora asked, her voice steady. "And you want me to leave your house?" "Immediately," Mason said, adjusting his cuffs. Elora reached into her purse, a battered leather bag, and pulled out her phone. She didn't look at the divorce papers. She looked at the screen. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll sign." "Good girl," Brianna scoffed, finally seeing reason. But Elora continued, standing up. She wasn't slouching anymore. She stood tall, her eyes locking onto Mason's. "There is one small correction you need to make to your statement." "And what is that?" Mason asked, rolling his eyes. "This isn't your house," Elora said. Mason let out a laugh that sounded more like a bark. "Excuse me, I pay the mortgage. My name is on the mailbox." "Your name is on the mailbox," Elora agreed, walking slowly around the table toward him. "But you don't pay the mortgage, Mason. You pay rent. You pay rent to a holding company called Nebula Properties, LLC. Mason frowned. "Yeah, so? They're the bank's property management firm." "No," Elora said, stopping right behind Charlotte's chair. "Nebula Properties isn't a bank firm. It's a private trust." "What are you babbling about?" Brianna snapped. "Just sign the papers and leave, you miserable girl." Elora ignored her mother-in-law. "Do you remember 5 years ago, Mason? When your grandmother passed away, you told me she left you nothing." "She didn't," Mason defended. "She was broke." "She wasn't broke," Elora said quietly. "She was disappointed. She knew you were reckless. She knew you were arrogant. So she didn't leave the money to you. She left it to the one person she trusted to take care of you until you grew up." Mason's face went pale. "What?" "She left the estate, the trust fund, and the majority shareholder voting rights for the family assets to me," Elora said. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. "That's a lie," Charlotte squeaked, looking back and forth between them. "Mason, tell her she's lying." "It's impossible," Mason stammered. You clipped coupons for groceries. You drive a 2010 Civic." "Because I was trying to teach you the value of money," Elora shouted, finally losing her cool. "I was trying to help you build Harrison Tech from the ground up so you could feel proud of yourself. I lived simply so you wouldn't be a trust fund brat. But you didn't build Harrison Tech, Mason." Elora pulled a pen from her purse. She flipped the divorce papers open to the signature page. You mentioned the Zenith Group merger, Elora said, clicking the pen. The investors flying in from Dubai. Yes, Mason breathed, sweat beading on his forehead. I'm the majority shareholder of Zenith Group, Elora said nonchalantly. Mason's knees buckled. He actually stumbled back, grabbing the chair for support. Brianna dropped her wineglass. Red wine shattered and stained the expensive Persian rug. You, Mason gasped. You own Zenith? I am Zenith, Elora corrected. And as of 8 p.m. tonight, while you were insulting my body and my clothes, I sent an email to the board. She signed the divorce papers with a flourish. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was the loudest sound in the world. I blocked the merger, Elora said, and I initiated a hostile takeover of Harrison Tech. Since you used company funds to buy that ring for Charlotte, yes, I saw the bank alerts. I do the accounting, remember? You have embezzled corporate funds. That's a fireable offense. Elora tossed the signed papers back at him. They hit his chest and fluttered to the floor. I'm granting you the divorce, Mason, she said, her voice turning to ice. But I'm keeping the house. And the company. And the car. You have 1 hour to pack your bags. And take your mother and your mistress with you. Elora, wait! Mason lunged forward, grabbing her hand. The arrogance was gone, replaced by sheer panic. Baby, please. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. It was a test. I just wanted to see if you really loved me. Get your hands off me, Elora hissed, ripping her arm away. We can fix this, Mason pleaded, tears actually forming in his eyes now. Think about us. 5 years, Elora. You can't just throw that away. You threw it away when you threw these papers on my plate, Elora said. She turned to the head butler, Mr. Henderson, who had been standing silently in the corner the whole time. Mr. Henderson? Yes, madam? The butler stepped forward, a small, satisfied smile on his face. He had always hated Mason. Please escort these trespassers off the property. If they are not gone in 60 minutes, call the sheriff. I believe trespassing is a crime. With pleasure, madam. Elora didn't look back. She turned on her heel and walked out of the dining room, listening to the sounds of Mason screaming her name and Brianna wailing in the background. She walked up the grand staircase to the master bedroom. She closed the door and locked it. She leaned against the heavy wood, her heart pounding in her chest like a trapped bird. The adrenaline was fading, and the reality was setting in. She had destroyed him. She had won. But as she looked at herself in the mirror, the faded dress, the tired eyes, she didn't feel like a winner. She felt broken. She walked to the closet and pulled out a hidden duffel bag. Inside wasn't money, but files. Files that proved something even darker about Mason. The embezzlement was just the tip of the iceberg. She hadn't told him the whole truth yet. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Did you do it? Is he out? Elora typed back, yes, it's done. The reply came instantly. Good. Now we can proceed to phase 2. He owes money to people you don't want to mess with, Elora. And since you just took over his company, those debts are now yours. Elora stared at the phone. The victory evaporated. She thought taking the company was the end of the war. She had no idea she had just stepped onto a battlefield with enemies far more dangerous than her ex-husband, while Elora sat in the master bedroom of the estate she now fully controlled. Mason Harrison was experiencing a reality check that hit him harder than a freight train. 3 hours later, the king of Harrison Tech was standing in the lobby of a budget motel on the outskirts of the city. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering ominously. The carpet smelled of stale cigarettes and damp dog fur. This is unacceptable, Mason, Brianna shrieked, clutching her designer handbag to her chest as if the motel clerk was going to snatch it. I cannot sleep here. The sheets probably have bed bugs. Call the Ritz. I tried, Mother, Mason snapped, running a hand through his disheveled hair. My credit cards are declined, all of them. The black card, the platinum, even the emergency gas card. She froze everything. Charlotte was sitting on a stained orange sofa in the lobby, scrolling through her phone. My cards aren't working either, she said, her voice devoid of the sweetness she had used at dinner. You said I was on the corporate account. Why did it get declined at Sephora online just now? Because Elora owns the corporation. Charlotte, Mason yelled. She cut us off. Well, fix it. Charlotte stood up, her eyes narrowing. You're the genius CEO, aren't you? You told me you were worth $50 million. Right now, you can't even buy me a vending machine soda. I will fix it, Mason roared, startling the sleepy clerk behind the glass partition. I'll call my lawyers in the morning. She can't just steal my company. There are laws. This is theft. But deep down, Mason knew it wasn't theft. It was a trap he had walked into 5 years ago, blinded by his own arrogance. He had signed those trust documents without reading them because he was too busy partying in Ibiza. He had assumed his grandmother was just a senile old woman. He never thought she would hand the keys to the kingdom to the quiet, mouse-like girl he married for convenience. Back at the Harrison estate, Elora wasn't sleeping. She was sitting in Mason's home office, now her office, surrounded by stacks of paper. The mysterious text message was still burning in her mind. He owes money to people you don't want to mess with. She had called the number back, but it was disconnected, a burner phone. Elora turned her attention to the safe behind the painting of a sailboat. She knew the combination. Mason used his own birthday for everything. 0412. The safe beeped and clicked open. Inside there was no cash, just a single, black, leather-bound notebook and a flash drive. Elora opened the notebook. It wasn't accounting. It was a list of names and numbers, but not phone numbers. Dollar amounts, huge ones. Viper Holdings, $2.5 million, due November 1st. The Syndicate, $4 million, interest pending. Silas Thorne, collateral, Project Chimera. Elora's blood ran cold. She knew the name Silas Thorne. Everyone in the tech world whispered it, but never loudly. Thorne wasn't a banker. He was a private investor for desperate people, a man with ties to organized crime who laundered money through failing startups. "Oh, Mason," Elora whispered, covering her mouth. "What have you done?" Mason hadn't just been ignoring her to build the company. He had been ignoring her because he was drowning. He had borrowed millions from dangerous loan sharks to inflate the company's value so he could sell it to Zenith Group before the debts came due. But Elora had blocked the merger, which meant there was no payout coming. And the debts were still there. And since Elora had just legally claimed the company as her asset, the debts were now hers. The phone on the desk rang. It was 2 a.m. Elora picked it up, her hand shaking. "Hello?" "Mrs. Harrison," a deep, gravelly voice said. "It wasn't Mason. Or should I say, the new CEO." "Who is this?" Elora demanded, trying to sound stronger than she felt. "This is Mr. Thorne's associate. We heard about the hostile takeover. Congratulations. Very bold." "If this is about money," Elora said, "I need to see the loan agreements. I'm freezing all payments until I audit the books." The voice on the other end laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "That's not how this works, Elora. Mason put up Project Chimera as collateral. Do you know what that is?" "No," she admitted. "It's the source code for your company's new AI algorithm. The only thing of value you have. If we don't get $6.5 million by Friday at noon, we take the code. And we take the company. And just to make sure you're motivated." The voice paused. "We know where your sister lives in Portland. We know she has a cute little 3-year-old named Sophie. Cute kid. It would be a shame if she had an accident on the playground." Elora slammed the phone down, her breath coming in ragged gasps. They threatened her niece. Mason hadn't just ruined their marriage. He had endangered her entire family. Elora stood up. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. Mason thought he was playing 4D chess, but he was just a pawn. She needed to stop playing by the rules. She picked up her cell phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "Liam?" she said when the groggy voice answered. "It's Elora. I know Mason fired you for asking too many questions about security. I'm hiring you back, and I need you to bring your gun." The lobby of Harrison Tech was a monument to Mason's ego. Glass, steel, and a giant portrait of him hanging behind the reception desk. At 8:30 a.m., the automatic doors slid open. Mason Harrison marched in, wearing the same suit from the night before, though it was now wrinkled, and he smelled faintly of motel soap. Brianna and Charlotte trailed behind him like lost puppies. "Good morning, Sarah," Mason shouted at the receptionist. "Get security on the line!" "I want to report a theft of corporate property." Sarah, the receptionist who had worked there for 3 years, didn't smile. She looked down at her desk. I can't do that, Mr. Harrison." "What do you mean you can't? I'm the CEO." Mason slammed his hand on the desk. "I built this place." "Actually," a voice rang out from the elevator bank, "you didn't." The elevator doors opened, and Elora stepped out. She wasn't wearing the floral dress from last night. She was wearing a sharp, navy blue power suit that fit her perfectly. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and she wore stilettos that clicked rhythmically against the marble floor. Flanking her were 2 large men in black suits. One of them was Liam, the former head of security, looking grim and crossed-armed. "Elora!" Mason gasped. He started to walk toward her, but Liam stepped forward, blocking his path. "Step back, Mason," Liam rumbled. "You hired him back?" Mason sneered. "The guy the first fired for incompetence?" "I hired him back because he was the only one honest enough to tell you that your cybersecurity was a joke," Elora said calmly. She stopped in the middle of the lobby. Employees were gathering on the balconies above, watching the scene unfold. "What are you doing here, Elora?" Mason hissed. "You can't just walk in here." "I called an emergency board meeting at 9 a.m., Elora announced, her voice projecting clearly to the silent crowd. "And as the majority shareholder, I am formally removing you as CEO, Mason, effective immediately." "On what grounds?" Mason screamed, his face turning purple. "You have no grounds?" "Embezzlement," Elora said simply. "Fraud, laundering money for Silas Thorne." The name sucked the air out of the room. Mason froze. His eyes went wide with terror. You know?" "I know everything," Elora said. She held up the black notebook. "I found your ledger, Mason. I know you borrowed $6 million from the mob to lease that Ferrari, to rent the penthouse, to buy Charlotte's jewelry. You've been living a lie." She turned to the employees. "Listen to me," she called out. "Mason Harrison has leveraged this company's future to pay for his lifestyle. He owes millions to dangerous people, but I am not him. I am not going to run. I am going to fix this." "She's lying," Charlotte shouted shrilly. "She's just jealous because I'm prettier than her." Elora slowly turned her head to look at Charlotte. "Charlotte, check your purse." "What?" Charlotte blinked. "The diamond ring Mason gave you last night," Elora said. "The one purchased with company funds. Check the inscription on the inside." Charlotte frowned, pulling the ring off her finger and squinting at the inside of the band. "It says, 'Property of prop set A'?" Charlotte read aloud, confused. The lobby erupted in murmurs. "It's a cubic zirconia fake," Elora revealed. "Mason bought it from a prop house for film sets. He charged the company account $50,000 for a marketing asset and bought a $200 fake ring." Charlotte gasped, dropping the ring as if it were on fire. She turned to Mason, her face twisting in rage. "You gave me a fake ring? You cheap, lying loser!" "It was a placeholder," Mason stammered, backing away. "I was going to get the real one after the merger." "There is no merger," Brianna wailed. "We are ruined." "Security," Elora said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Please escort Mr. Harrison and his guests out of the building. Their access badges are deactivated." 2 more guards stepped forward. Mason looked around, desperate for an ally. But the employees, the developers he had overworked, the assistants he had screamed at, were looking at him with pure disdain. "This isn't over, Elora," Mason screamed as the guards grabbed his arms. "Thorne is coming. He'll kill you. You don't know what you've done. You need me to talk to him." "I don't need you for anything, Mason," Elora said coldly. They dragged him out the glass doors, Brianna sobbing and Charlotte hitting Mason with her purse. As the doors slid shut, the lobby broke into applause. It started slow, then grew louder. The employees were cheering. Elora didn't smile. She felt the weight of the black notebook in her hand. She had won the battle for the building, but the war was just starting. She turned to Liam. "Lock down the elevators. No one comes in or out without my authorization. And get the forensic accountants in the conference room. Now." "Yes, ma'am," Liam said. "But Elora, Mason was right about one thing. Thorne isn't going to just sue you. He's going to come for blood." "I know," Elora said, walking toward the elevator. "That's why we're going to pay him a visit before he visits us." "You want to go to Silas Thorne?" Liam looked shocked. "That's suicide." "No," Elora said, pressing the button for the top floor. "Mason was afraid of him. Mason ran from him. I'm going to make him a deal he can't refuse. I'm going to sell him something worth more than $6 million. "What do you have that's worth that much?" Liam asked. Elora's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. "I have Mason's dirty secrets. And I have the names of every other tech CEO involved in his money laundering ring. Thorne doesn't want money, Liam. He wants leverage. And I'm about to give him the keys to the city." She stepped into the elevator, the doors closing on her determined face. But as the elevator rose, Elora's phone buzzed again. It was another text from the unknown number, the ally who had warned her before. "Good job getting rid of Mason, but be careful with Thorne. He isn't the one running the show anymore. He answers to someone else, someone you know very well." Elora frowned. Who could be above Silas Thorne? Suddenly, the elevator lurched. The lights flickered and died. The emergency brake screeched, throwing Elora against the wall. The elevator hung suspended between the 30th and 31st floors. Total darkness. Then, a voice came over the elevator speaker. It wasn't the building's security. It was a distorted, computerized voice. "Hello, Elora. You really shouldn't have fired your husband. We needed him." "Who is this?" Elora shouted, banging on the door. "Liam, get me out of here." "Liam can't hear you," the voice mocked. "We hacked the building management system. We control the air, the locks, and the elevators. You have 10 minutes to transfer the Project Chimera source code to an offshore server, or we drop this elevator car 40 stories to the basement." Elora looked at her phone. No signal. She was trapped in a steel box, suspended over a deadly drop, with an invisible enemy holding her life ransom. And the worst part? She realized Mason wasn't the villain of this story. He was just the distraction. The elevator groaned, the steel cable singing a high-pitched song of tension above Elora's head. The emergency lights cast the small box in a blood-red glow, making her own reflection in the mirrored walls look like a ghost. 7 minutes, the distorted voice crackled over the speaker. "Do not test us, Elora. The brakes on this car are disengaged. We are holding you up with a digital override. If the upload isn't started, we cut the signal. Gravity will do the rest." Elora forced herself to breathe. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. She pressed her back against the cool metal wall, closing her eyes for a second. She thought about Mason. Mason would be screaming right now. Mason would be bargaining. But Elora wasn't Mason. She looked up at the ceiling hatch. It was locked from the outside, a safety measure, but Elora remembered the building schematics. She had approved the renovation invoices 3 years ago. She knew they had installed an older model of the Otis elevator system to save money, a model with a manual release latch behind the maintenance panel. "You want the code?" Elora shouted at the speaker, stalling for time. "I can't access it from in here. My phone has no signal. You have to let me out to the server room." "Nice try," the voice sneered. "There is a hardline jack in the control panel. Plug your phone in. We know you have the drive. Mason kept a backup in the safe." "Connect it." They knew about the safe. They knew everything. Elora pulled the flash drive from her pocket. She looked at the control panel. She didn't plug it in. Instead, she used the metal edge of the USB drive to unscrew the bottom plate of the button panel. It was slow, agonizing work. The screw turned a millimeter at a time. Click. The screw fell. She ripped the panel off, exposing a nest of colorful wires. "What are you doing, Elora?" The voice sounded agitated. 5 minutes. "Just looking for the adapter," she lied. She found the bundle of yellow wires, the emergency stop override. If she cut them, it might trigger the mechanical failsafe brakes. Or it might drop her. It was a coin toss. She didn't have wire cutters. She used her teeth to strip the casing, ignoring the taste of copper and dust. "Upload the data now!" The elevator shuddered. It dropped another 3 feet with a stomach-churning lurch. Elora screamed, falling to her knees. Dust rained down from the ceiling. That was a warning. Next time, we don't stop. Elora's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the wires. She twisted the 2 yellow ends together. Sparks flew, scorching her fingers. A loud clang echoed through the shaft as the mechanical clamps slammed against the rails. The elevator jerked violently and stopped dead. The speaker went silent. The digital control was overridden. She was safe from the drop, but she was still trapped between floors. Elora stood on the handrail, balancing precariously in her heels. She pushed up on the ceiling hatch. It was heavy, but with the electronic lock disabled by the short circuit, it gave way. She grunted, shoving it aside, and pulled herself up into the dark, greasy shaft. The air smelled of oil and cold concrete. She looked up. The doors to the 31st floor were 5 feet above her. She climbed the greasy cables, ruining her navy suit, tearing her fingernails. She reached the lip of the 31st floor doors and dug her fingers into the rubber seal. With a primal scream of effort, she forced the doors open, just enough to squeeze through. She tumbled out onto the carpeted hallway of the executive floor, gasping for air, covered in black grease. She didn't stop. She kicked off her broken stilettos and ran barefoot toward the server room. She turned the corner and collided with a solid wall of muscle. "Elora!" It was Liam. He had his gun drawn, his face pale. "I heard the elevator slam. I thought you were dead. The stairs were locked down. I had to shoot the maglock to get up here." "The hacker," Elora panted, grabbing his arm. "They're in the building. The signal to the elevator had 0 latency. They aren't remote. They're here." Liam's eyes narrowed. "The server room?" "It's the only place with a direct line to the elevator controls," Elora said. They moved down the hall, silent and tactical. The server room door was at the end of the corridor. It was slightly ajar. The blue light from the server racks spilled out into the hallway. Liam signaled for her to stay back. He raised his weapon and kicked the door wide open. "Freeze! Security!" Elora peered around Liam's shoulder. She expected to see a team of mercenaries in tactical gear. She expected Silas Thorne. Instead, she saw a single figure sitting in the ergonomic chair, surrounded by screens. The figure spun around slowly. Elora's jaw dropped. Charlotte? The mistress was sitting there, but she looked different. Gone was the vacant, deer-in-the-headlights expression. Gone was the slouch. She sat with the poise of a predator. She was typing on a keyboard with blinding speed, not even looking at the keys. "Took you long enough," Charlotte said, her voice completely different. It was deeper, sharper, the distorted voice from the elevator. "You." Elora stepped into the room, bewildered. "You're the hacker, but you thought the cubic zirconia was real." Charlotte laughed, a cold, calculating sound. "Oh, honey. That was theater. I knew the ring was fake the second he gave it to me. I knew Mason was broke 6 months ago. I needed him to stay desperate. A desperate man takes risks. A desperate man borrows money from Silas Thorne." Liam kept his gun trained on her. "Step away from the console, lady." "Or what?" Charlotte didn't flinch. "You shoot me, and the dead man switch triggers. I have a script running. If I don't press a key every 30 seconds, the entire Harrison Tech database, including Project Chimera, gets wiped, irreversibly." She tapped a key with a manicured fingernail. "Resetting the timer. You have 29 seconds to convince me not to burn this company to the ground." Elora motioned for Liam to lower the gun. "What do you want, Charlotte? Or whatever your real name is." "Charlotte is fine," she shrugged. "I've grown fond of it. And I don't want money. I want the source code, the real source code, not the dummy version Mason kept on his laptop." "Who are you working for?" Elora demanded. "Thorne?" Thorn is a blunt instrument, Charlotte scoffed. He breaks kneecaps. I work for the people who pay Thorn to break kneecaps. The syndicate isn't interested in your little accounting software, Elora. They want Chimera, because Mason didn't build an AI assistant. He accidentally built a polymorphic decryption engine. Elora felt a chill. What? Mason's code doesn't just organize calendars, Charlotte explained, her eyes gleaming with fanaticism. It learns patterns. It can crack 256-bit encryption in under an hour by predicting the prime numbers. Do you have any idea what that's worth to foreign intelligence? To the black market? Mason is an idiot, Elora said. He couldn't code something like that. He didn't know he did it, Charlotte said. He smashed 2 open-source libraries together and got lucky. A digital Frankenstein. But I saw it. I was sent here to steal it. Sleeping with that narcissist was just the easiest way to get access to his private network. Charlotte looked at the timer. 10 seconds. Give me the flash drive, Elora. Elora clutched the drive in her pocket. If she gave it to Charlotte, a dangerous weapon would be loose in the world. If she didn't, her company, her legacy, her grandmother's legacy, would be erased. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Get off me! I'm the CEO! Mason Harrison burst into the server room, his suit torn, a bruise blooming on his cheek where the security guard had likely grabbed him. He had somehow slipped back into the building through the loading dock. Elora! Mason shouted, pointing a shaking finger at her. You locked me out! And you! He turned to Charlotte. You traitorous little... He stopped. He saw the screens. He saw the gun in Liam's hand. He saw the cold, dead look in Charlotte's eyes. Charlotte? Mason whispered. What's going on? Shut up, Mason, Charlotte and Elora said in unison. Mason, Charlotte said, her tone bored. You were supposed to leave. You're ruining the exchange. Exchange? Mason looked at the screens. Are you hacking my company? It's not your company anymore, Mason, Charlotte snapped. It never was. You were just the host organism, and now you're a liability. Charlotte pulled a small silver pistol from beneath the desk. She didn't aim it at Elora, she aimed it at Mason. Give me the drive, Elora, Charlotte commanded. Or I put a bullet in your ex-husband. I know you hate him, but are you a killer? Elora froze. She hated Mason. He had humiliated her, cheated on her, and stolen from her. But did she want him dead? Mason stared at the gun, trembling. Charlotte, baby, please. I bought you a car. Leased, Charlotte corrected. With money you stole. Goodbye, Mason. Wait, Elora shouted, stepping forward. Don't! Hand it over! Elora pulled the flash drive out. Here, take it! Just don't shoot him! She slid the drive across the smooth floor. It spun and stopped at Charlotte's feet. Charlotte smiled, keeping the gun trained on Mason. She bent down, picked up the drive, and plugged it into the console. Verifying, she mumbled, typing with one hand. Encryption key, match, structure, match. Good girl, Elora. The screens turned green. Upload complete. Now, Charlotte said, standing up. Since I have what I came for, I'll be leaving. Liam, drop your gun and kick it over here. If you twitch, Mason dies. Liam hesitated, looking at Elora. Elora nodded. Liam placed his weapon on the floor and kicked it away. You're not going to get away with this, Mason whimpered. I'll call the police. Mason, look at me, Charlotte said, walking toward the back exit of the server room. I'm a ghost. By the time the police get here, I'll be in a different time zone. And you're going to be busy explaining to the FBI why you built a cyber weapon. Charlotte reached the door. She looked back at Elora, a strange expression on her face. Almost respect. You're smarter than him, Elora. You should have been the CEO from day one. Maybe we could have been partners. I don't partner with snakes, Elora spat. Pity. Charlotte hit the enter key one last time. I disabled the data wipe. Consider it a parting gift. But I also triggered the fire alarm. The Halen gas system is going to discharge in this room in 30 seconds. It sucks the oxygen out of the air to put out fires. I suggest you run. With a wink, Charlotte slipped out the door and locked it from the outside. A siren began to wail. Whoop! Warning! A robotic voice announced. Hell-on discharge imminent. Evacuate immediately. She locked us in! Mason screamed, running to the door and pounding on it. Open it! Open the door! Liam grabbed a heavy fire extinguisher and slammed it against the glass panel of the door. It was reinforced safety glass. It cracked, but didn't shatter. Stand back! Liam roared. He slammed it again. Thud. Again. Thud. 20 seconds, the voice warned. Elora looked around. The vents in the ceiling were opening. The gas was coming. The window! Elora pointed to the server room window that overlooked the atrium. It wasn't an exit, but it broke into the hallway below. It's too thick! Liam yelled. Elora grabbed a heavy server tower, a metal box full of hard drives. Mason, help him! For the first time in his life, Mason listened. He grabbed the other side of the server tower. On 3! Elora yelled. 1, 2, 3! They swung the heavy computer and smashed it through the interior window. Glass exploded outward, raining down into the lobby. Jump! Liam commanded. Liam vaulted through the broken window first, landing in a roll on the carpet below. He turned and caught Elora as she jumped. Mason scrambled onto the ledge. 10 seconds, the voice said. A hissing sound filled the room behind him. The white gas was pouring in. Mason jumped. He landed awkwardly, twisting his ankle, and let out a howl of pain. Up above, the server room filled with opaque white gas. If they had been in there, they would have suffocated in seconds. Elora lay on the floor, gasping for breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at Mason, who was clutching his ankle and sobbing. My code! Mason wept. She took it. She took everything. Elora stood up, brushing the glass shards off her clothes. She walked over to Mason and looked down at him. She didn't take everything, Elora said quietly. Mason looked up, sniffing. What? She took the flash drive from the safe, Elora said. The one you kept as a backup. Yeah, so? So, Elora said, a small, cold smile touching her lips. I swapped the files on that drive this morning before I came to the office. Mason's eyes widened. You did what? I replaced Project Chimera with a 4-terabyte zip file of our wedding photos and a virus I downloaded from the dark web, Elora said. When she tries to decrypt that file at her headquarters, it's not going to give her a weapon. It's going to brick her entire network. Liam let out a short, incredulous laugh. You are terrifying, Mrs. Harrison. I had to be, Elora said. To survive him, she gestured to Mason. So we won? Mason asked, hope rising in his voice. We beat her. Does that mean I can have my company back? Elora's face hardened. No, Mason, we didn't win anything. I saved the company. You are still fired, and you still owe Silas Thorne $6 million. Mason's face fell. But Thorne will kill me. You heard Charlotte. He works for her people. Actually, a deep voice boomed from the main entrance of the lobby. They all turned. Standing there, flanked by 4 men who looked like they chewed rocks for breakfast, was a man in a pristine white suit. He had silver hair, a cane, and a scar running down his left cheek. It was Silas Thorne. I don't work for Charlotte, Thorne said, his voice smooth like velvet over gravel. Charlotte was a contractor I hired to retrieve the code, and since she just failed, I decided to come collect the debt myself. He walked forward, his cane tapping rhythmically on the marble. Mrs. Harrison, Thorne said, stopping a few feet away, you have something that belongs to me. And your husband? Well, your husband has become very expensive to keep alive. The lobby of Harrison Tech was silent, save for the rhythmic tapping of Silas Thorne's cane. He stopped 5 feet from Elora, his eyes dark and unreadable. His men fanned out, blocking every exit. Mason was trembling so violently that his teeth chattered. Mr. Thorne, please, it wasn't my fault. The girl, Charlotte, she tricked me. Thorne didn't even look at Mason. He kept his gaze fixed on Elora. You have spirit, Mrs. Harrison, Thorne said softly. My contractor, Charlotte, told me you swapped the drive. That was clever. Most people in your position would have panicked. I don't panic, Elora said, standing her ground despite the fear twisting in her gut. I plan. Planning is good, Thorne nodded, But payment is better. My investors are unhappy. Mason promised them a weapon. He failed. Now I have to clean up the mess. And usually, cleaning up involves removing the stains. He gestured slightly with his hand. Two of his men stepped toward Mason. "No, no!" Mason shrieked, scrambling backward on the floor like a crab. "Elora, do something! Tell him! Tell him I'm useful!" "He's not useful," Elora said coldly. Mason's face crumpled in betrayal. "However," Elora continued, locking eyes with Thorn, "he is the father of my future children." The room went still. Mason blinked. "What?" "I'm not pregnant, Mason," Elora said without looking at him, "but I might want to be one day. And I don't want to explain to them that their father was executed in a lobby because he was too stupid to read a contract." She took a step toward Thorn. "I have a counteroffer, Mr. Thorn." Thorn raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "You want the AI code because you want to sell it to the highest bidder," Elora said. "It's worth, what, 20 million on the black market?" 50, Thorn corrected. 50 million, Elora nodded. "But it's a one-time sale. You sell it, you lose it, and then the NSA comes looking for whoever sold it." "It's risky money." "High risk, high reward," Thorn shrugged. "I can offer you low risk, higher reward," Elora said. She reached into her blazer pocket. The guards tensed, hands moving to their holsters. Elora pulled out a folded piece of paper, the divorce settlement Mason had thrown at her the night before. But she flipped it over. On the back, she had written a series of numbers during the car ride over. "This is a contract," Elora said, handing it to him. "Not for the code, but for the legitimate version of the software." Thorn took the paper, frowning. "Legitimate?" "Project Chimera isn't just a weapon," Elora explained. "It's the most efficient logistics algorithm in the world. If you use it legally, you can optimize shipping routes, stock markets, and energy grids. I've run the projections. Licensing this software to Fortune 500 companies will generate $10 million a year, every year, forever." Thorn looked at the numbers. He looked at Elora. "You want to go legit?" Thorn asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Me?" "You're tired, Silas," Elora said, using his first name. "It was a gamble. I can see it. You're tired of chasing bad debts. You're tired of hiring unstable contractors like Charlotte. You want a legacy. You want clean money." She pointed to the paper. "I am offering you a 15% silent partnership in Harrison Tech. You provide the protection so people like Charlotte don't bother us. We provide the clean, laundered, perfectly legal profits. 10 million a year. No FBI. No NSA. Just checks depositing into your account." Thorn was silent for a long time. The air in the lobby was so thick it felt solid. Mason held his breath, his face blue. Finally, Thorn laughed. It was a rich, genuine laugh. "Mason," Thorn said, looking down at the cowering man, "you are an absolute fool." I know," Mason whispered. "You had a shark in your kitchen, and you treated her like a goldfish." Thorn shook his head. He turned to Elora and extended his hand. "Deal." Elora took his hand. It was cold and dry. "Deal." "However," Thorn said, his grip tightening slightly, "the debt must still be paid. The principal, 6 million. "I don't have 6 million liquid," Elora said. "No," Thorn agreed, "but you have assets." He pointed his cane at Mason. "Him." "Excuse me?" Mason squeaked. "Mason has a very expensive life insurance policy," Thorn mused. "But I suppose we can't cash that in if we're going legitimate." Thorn sighed. "Fine. Mason will work it off." "Work it off?" Mason asked. "Like, as a consultant?" "No," Thorn smiled, revealing gold-capped teeth. "My mother has a pig farm in Alabama. It's very hard work, very smelly. We need someone to shovel the byproduct. We calculate your labor value at $5 an hour. By my math, you should be debt-free in about," he tapped his head, "400 years." "You can't be serious," Mason shouted. "Elora, you can't let them take me to a pig farm." Elora walked over to Mason. She crouched down so she was eye level with him. She looked at his panicked face. The face she had loved for 5 years, the face that had laughed at her body and her clothes just 24 hours ago. "Mason," she said softly, "you wanted a divorce. You wanted to be free of me. You wanted to go your own way." She stood up and smoothed her skirt. "I'm granting your wish. Goodbye, Mason." "Elora, no! Elena!" Thorne snapped his fingers. His men hoisted Mason up by his armpits. He kicked and screamed as they dragged him toward the exit, his cries echoing off the glass walls until the doors slid shut, cutting him off. Elora stood alone in the center of the lobby with Silas Thorne. "You're a cold woman, Mrs. Harrison," Thorne said with admiration. "I'm a businesswoman, Mr. Thorne," Elora corrected, "and I have a company to run." Thorne tipped his hat and walked out into the sunlight. Elora took a deep breath. She looked around the lobby. It was hers. The company was hers. Her life was hers. She pulled out her phone and dialed the HR director. "Hello, this is Elora Harrison." "Yes." "The CEO. I need you to post a job opening. We need a new receptionist. Oh, and send a memo to the cafeteria staff. We're switching to a new menu. No more kale salads. I want pizza. Today." She hung up and walked toward the elevator. She caught her reflection in the glass. The tired, frumpy housewife was gone. The woman staring back was powerful, dangerous, and free. She pressed the button for the top floor. It was time to get to work. And that is how the poor, boring housewife ended up owning the entire empire. Can you believe Mason ended up on a pig farm? Honestly, that is the most satisfying karma I have ever heard. He wanted to treat Elora like dirt, and now he's literally shoveling it. What did you think of Elora's deal with Silas Thorne? Was it smart to go into business with a mobster, or did she just trade one problem for another? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another story about karma hitting back instantly. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.